Howdy, strangers.
Saludos Amigos was the first of two films that Walt Disney produced as part of a goodwill program to Latin America during World War II. In the effort to expand President Franklin D. Roosevelt's Good Neighbor Policy and to impede South American governments from allying themselves with Nazi Germany, the US Department of State contracted the Disney Studios to create a film that could strengthen the United States' relationship with the southern continent. The federal loans provided were much needed by the financially ailing studio, and the program also allowed Walt an easy escape to South America in the midst of the arduous Disney labor strike. The film set quite a few milestones for the Walt Disney Studios. It was the first of 6 package features released during the 1940s. It was the first and only film in the animated canon that Walt Disney made a personal appearance in, with the exception of The Reluctant Dragon. It is the only film in the series to date whose title is entirely in a different language. Translated, Saludos Amigos means hello friends in Spanish. It is also Disney's shortest film, clocking in at 42 minutes. Its short runtime notwithstanding, the film made a distinct impression and introduced new characters that are still celebrated beyond the southern border. But is it required viewing? Hello Kyle, how's it going? Are you excited?
Bursting at the seams.
You can feel it, the Latin beat is swirling through his veins, he's bursting. How's it going, TJ?
Arriba, bitches. Arriba.
Hola, ¿cómo estás? Muy bien, gracias. ¿Y tú?
Termine sentados, por favor.
See, why do we need... Kyle, why are we here? This man can have an entire conversation with himself and make it interesting.
Hey, I wonder why he doesn't...
¿Dónde está la biblioteca?
The library of knowledge is in your brain, my friend. Moving on.
As a kid, growing up, I watched The Three Caballeros. In fact, it was the first VHS I ever owned. And I just fell in love with its music. I mean, the film, well, we'll get to the film later, but I just fell in love with the color and the music. And so I discovered at a very early age that it had a predecessor, Saludos Amigos. What? 42 minutes? It's a whole movie? What? Donald Duck? Goofy's in it? Holy crap, I need to watch this. Walt Disney himself is in it.
I know, right?
I eventually got around to seeing it because it came out on VHS at the same time it came out on DVD. In a strange way, the first DVD I ever owned was Saludos Amigos.
God, man.
You guys had never seen this movie before, am I correct?
Nope.
Had you even heard of this movie before?
No.
Only because you brought it up in all your Disney ramblings and glory.
So it's funny to think about the early years of the Disney Studios, because it went from 1937, we had Snow White, 1940, Pinocchio and Fantasia, then Dumbo, then Bambi, then Saludos Amigos. So something's wrong in this pattern, methinks. Anyway, now that you've seen and experienced this film, before we break it down, what are your first impressions of Saludos Amigos?
Awesome. And I'm saying awesome because you came to me first. This is cool. I didn't know what to expect. Did not know what to expect at all. And I'm like, all right, something I don't know anything about. And then they start talking about, this really cool lake that's really, really high up.
Lake
so
Titicaca.
I'm like, wow, I would love to live there. And then it's like, well, you're going to start getting heart palpitations and you're going to get dizzy and, I don't know. There's a lot going on. It's introducing me to a whole lot of stuff about Latin America that I did not know about. So I am excited for this after school special.
It's an early example of edutainment, more or less.
You had briefed me a little bit of the history in our production meeting. All I can think to myself when I got done is like, this was your Zimmerman telegram repellent? Really? No. Anyways, you'll get to more on that later in the history. This sounds like something you would do in like an elementary school geography class to pass the time, not particularly how you say entertaining per se, but it beats the hell out of reading another textbook, which, I mean, considering the homework load that 4-year-olds have nowadays. 4-year-olds have a butt ton of homework, okay? There's your warning. No one gave me that, okay? But there's your warning. So considering nowadays, by the time she gets to 5th grade, she'll have like a bag with like 7 textbooks in it. This movie for one class period will beat the hell out of her having to stick her face in that textbook again. So it's a welcome reprieve and break, and you might even learn a couple things as, you know, you watch Donald Duck exercise several adverse health effects right there, right in front of you. Though I will say this, Gaucho Goofy was very entertaining.
I thought you'd get a kick out of that. That's why I kind of kept that as a secret before you watched it. But here's the thing, though. I mean, I'm glad you mentioned it. We mentioned in the intro, this film was part of the U.S.'s Good Neighbor Policy to try to avert Latin America from having ties with Nazi Germany, and It had a huge effect. I mean, for instance, a lot of the travelogue, the live action travelogue portions of it, a lot of Americans at the time didn't know how advanced the countries in South America were. They didn't know they had skyscrapers. They didn't know that they had big cities and so forth. So it was actually very eye-opening. It's easy for us to take that for granted nowadays. The world has become a lot smaller. Film historian Alfred Charles Richard Jr., that's an epic name, has commented that Saludos Amigos did more to cement a community of interest between peoples of the Americas in a few months than the State Department had in 50 years.
I believe it.
The idea was just to do this one film, and it became so popular that they did the sequel, The Three Caballeros, and pumped a lot more money in that one. The big song of the film, Brazil, Watercolors of Brazil, it's become a staple nowadays. Because of this film, it became the first Portuguese song to ever be played in American radio. So for a film that nowadays nobody has heard of, it hit a lot of major historical points.
I'll put it this way, Demos. Something of this effect, a work such as this that had great impact doesn't necessarily have to be a great narrative piece or even a great piece of or a great example of its craft. Listen, folks, if you want a page-turning book, something that rivets you and keeps you or prevents you from putting it down, folks, do not invest in the Bible. It is not a great literary work. However, it is a great work that shapes civilization.
I'm just glad that they were able to choose a character such as Donald to open the lines of communication, because we all know that Donald Duck, the easiest character in the Disney pantheon to understand, would be the ideal character to facilitate this. At the time, he was the most popular Disney character. In many countries around the world, he's the most popular Disney character. To this day, in Brazil, his companion, Jose Carioca, created just for this film, is still a #1 character. There's a reason why there's a Three Caballeros ride at Disney World now.
I get it. This is Disney's illustration of a people. So, you know, if that's what you have to look at positively, I mean, I can get why, you know, people got love for it. Jose is a cool cat. I thought the whole concept, the whole dynamic between him and Donald, I thought was hilarious, because Donald's saying, look, I can't understand you, bro. And then, I mean, you think about it, everything that I've watched with Donald Duck, I'm sitting here thinking, I can't understand you, bro. So it's real cool, that little back and forth that they had, man. I didn't know that they were such a big deal, though. I mean, this is really news to me. I like that Donald was being your typical American tourist going into other countries and wrecking shop. You know, he went to the Pottery Barn and messed up. They got a tranquil thing going on down there, you know. And what does he want to do? I want to go and put their clothes on and take pictures.
I don't know, I'm offended by Donald's cultural appropriation. It has some fun with some of the stereotypes, whether it's Jose Carioca's fast talking, et cetera, or Donald Duck's American stereotype, like I'm going to go take pictures, dress up and everything and so forth. But at the end of the day, the film has a good heart about it. It's not about deriding another culture. I mean, they compare the gaucho to the American cowboy. Here are the differences. This is where we differ. Here, this is where we are the same. Donald Duck can barely speak. Jose Carioca can ramble on 1,000 sentences before Donald can quack a single word out. But they become good friends despite those differences. I think it has a lot of fun with it.
I see a lot of that there, and that is, I see the unity being drawn in, but there is still one stereotype that is grossly at play, and I'm a little disappointed neither of you acknowledged it. Why do giant mountains always have to be evil?
Never-ending story. That giant mountain was kind of a badass.
Badass? What do you mean? That he was only good at wrecking things? Didn't have a heart? You ever thought of
I
that?
take offense to that, and so should your personal hero, The Rock, because
Hey, maybe the mountain was sending a congratulations on the new baby notice.
all right. So let's.
Family.
So as I mentioned, this film is a package feature, which means it basically consists of 4 different shorts. Now, during the 1940s, because of the war effort and because of studio financial issues and a lot of the animators getting drafted, Disney started releasing a lot of package features which were of this ilk, either combinations of 2 35-minute cartoons or a whole compilation of different shorts. This was the first. And I think that this one is actually one of the more complete, because despite the fact that these 4 different shorts, they differ in quality, in tone, and in theming in some cases, the framing device of using the live action footage of the animators and them having a travelogue experience and actually seeing where their inspirations came for the said shorts, I think is a fantastic way to do this, and a fantastic way to kind of capture a time capsule, a small time capsule, 42 minutes after all, of what Latin America was like at the time. Let's break down some of these shorts real quick. The first one, Lake Titicaca. Donald Duck in full tourist guise visits Lake Titicaca and has some fun on a suspension bridge. What did you guys think of this short?
It taught me a lot of stuff that I didn't know. I mean, this is edutainment at its best, man. I didn't know that Lake Titicaca was a real place.
Really?
Like, it is, and it is awesome. It's 13,000 feet above sea level. Ask me how I know.
How do you know?
Oh, I watched the movie, Charlotte.
Saludos freaking amigos.
Saludos, bleep, amigos, mother, beep. Okay, that's how he knows. I went Red Fox on that ass right there. Anyway, no, you know, well, there's 2 things 2 questions I have. A, if this is supposed to be the modern American at the time's first impression of a llama, that's interesting. And B, do you think Steven Spielberg or George Lucas were somehow inspired by by seeing that suspension bridge scene and then applying something like that to Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom? I'm just throwing that out there, Demos.
Yes, I'm sure that Steven Spielberg, when in the production of Indiana Jones, harkened back to Saludos Amigos.
Hey, man, listen, all I'm saying is that camel was about as stubborn as Willie Scott.
Well, funny enough, a lot of inspirations for the traps and atmosphere of Raiders of the Lost Ark were directly derived from Donald Duck comic books. So maybe I will say that I think that Donald Duck is a great character, but I think he is most effective when he is reacting off another character, or rather than being the driving force of the story. And you can see that to a much greater effect in the 4th and final short in this film. When he's reacting off of the narration, I think the counterpoint between the stoic narration and Donald actually screwing up, it's funny, but it's much funnier and just it comes alive when it's a character such as Goofy, which we also see later in this film. But I think at the end of the day, even compared to Donald Duck shorts of the time, it comes across as a little pedestrian, in my opinion. Nothing quite special, especially for a feature film.
True, but I'm pretty sure if Big TJ, kind of like Rosie Perez's character in White Men Can't Jump, she was studying foods that started with the letter Q and then torched that category on Jeopardy. If my dude ended up with a category about Lake Titicaca, boom. Each and every single square is going to my dude, Tokeo Jamison. Holla at your boy.
At the end of the day, when you're holding that $75,000 check, I want you to look at the camera and say, thank you, Saludos Amigos.
I'm going to say thank you, Hilarity, by default.
Even better. Get us those clicks. Pedro, the second short, is the one that stands out the most. It's the only short that doesn't feature a well-known Disney character. There's no Donald Duck, no Goofy. And if anything, it's a precursor. In many ways, it's a precursor to Cars and Planes, even down to everything is anthropomorphized in this film. It has a very, very different tone. It's a very different type of story. Well, how did you guys react to Pedro?
Well, I mean, the whole time they were talking about how he was a mail plane. And at first I thought it was just because he was carrying that package. No, apparently there was something else that made him a mail plane. And shouts back to Three Amigos humor. Moving on. No, but listen, man, I like Pedro. I like the fact that, you know, they amped it up that his dad was the big badass. It was like, yeah, I'm the damn mail plane. Yeah, mail plane. Who, you know, and you know, the two of them were air quotes sick, meaning they were in need of repair. Pedro had to step his game up, do his thing. And the fact that the narrator was like, no, leave the package behind, leave the mail behind, which apparently now I think is your, according to what you're telling me, a metaphor for him leaving his manhood behind, but whatever. So he rescues his mail, the mail, sorry. And completes the trip. It's like, damn you, narrator, I'm gonna handle my business. I'm Pedro, mother beep, you know. That was, to me, that was actually my favorite part of the movie, other than the gross stereotype around giant mountains.
I can't tell if that was very, very deep or whether I should try some of what you're having.
Both.
I enjoyed seeing the wall. That mountain was exactly that. I mean, I expected to see White Walkers. Now, when I'm thinking about when I think about Pedro, and now that you mentioned Cars and Planes, I want to go back and see if there is any Easter egg for Pedro, man, because I think that would be ideal, especially in the movie Planes, even though you have to be a Dan Cook fan to watch Planes, otherwise you're not going to like it. Thinking about this movie, though, I mean, it's the little engine that could. Pedro made that thing happen, man, and he's climbing, and all you got to do was reach 25,000 feet. I liked it. It was cool. I mean, it was cute.
That is a good final gag, you know, having a good time postcard. I've always joked whenever I see that scene, and like I'm so sad they never did a sequel. Pedro 2, Juan Carlos's Reckoning. It would have been it would have been a revenge drama. Now an older, wiser Pedro who has faced the mountain now faces the biggest enemy of all, man.
You might have just got me to click one Saturday afternoon when I got nothing else going on.
I think my favorite part about Pedro was the animation, honestly, some of the sight gags. There are some visual ideas in this short that I find extremely fascinating. I think one of my favorite shot in the short is where you're seeing it through his eyes with the windshield wipers going as he's facing up the mountain during the storm. I thought that was exhilarating. There's a lot of creativity. I think what lets me down is I think the story is a little too simple for my taste. It definitely feels like the one short in this whole film that seems geared towards the youngest demographic. For me, the film really kicks up a notch and really starts getting going with the third short, El Gacho Goofy. Mm-hmm. Everything in this short, I mean, it provides, I think it's the best example of edutainment. I think it's a fantastic example of taking this character. And I've already mentioned before the juxtaposition between the American cowboy and the gauchos. There isn't a single scene that doesn't take the gags to their fullest scalability. Even the scene transitions are used for comic effect, literally pushing Goofy out of the frame. And my God, the emotional, romantic center of the short, a Goofy and his horse. I mean, that just pulls on your heartstrings.
So what you're trying to say, Demos, is that when it comes to this particular segment, Goofy really got your attention.
Nothing says love like bestiality.
Here I am with an innocent little pun, and this dude's got to bring bestiality.
No.
Talking about edutainment, Schoolhouse Rock, man. I mean, they took him down and stripped him down naked. And then told me what each article of clothing was called. And then gave an explanation. And what I like, and look, I got love for Goofy. There's a debate right now. Is he a cow? Is he a dog? We'll figure it out.
He's a dog. Who the heck says he's a cow?
Those people who are interested with him interacting with Clarabelle, that's who.
One, Clarabelle, yes.
Speciesist.
Pluto is also a dog that can't talk. So,
because Pluto had mental problems, and Mickey was nice enough to take him in.
I would much rather Goofy be a cow than to accept that Pluto has mental problems that Mickey just decided to take in. I would much rather Goofy. And I know all cows are girls. I get it. I would just much rather him be a trans cow than for Pluto to have mental problems.
Goofy
but that's not even what I was supposed to be talking about. That's right. That right there is what we call a sidebar, people. What I liked most about this one, honestly, was the dance moves. Like, you know, some of those cats out there with the quick feet, you know what I'm saying, doing the whole thing. Like, that right there was cool. Like, they definitely gouged my attention. Like, that's for true.
That's a fantastic example of a case where it's giving you the context for the humor.
I dig that you appreciated the dancing, TJ, as did I. But frankly, all I saw was, well, there's a whole bunch of I can't do.
Whenever this happens in a Goofy cartoon, you know that you're about to see hilarity ensue. When they stop, they rewind, and then you see it happen again in slow motion. That's the moment where the animators can truly make a lanky character like Goofy really shine. This short right here, really, it feels like a defibrillator was used to spark a lot of life into this film. And I think it just kept going uphill from this point on. The music, starting from this scene onwards, I think it becomes much more of a character in Saludos Amigos. This film has terrific music, ranging from the original compositions for the film and the use of traditional melodies and songs. My favorite portion of Saludos Amigos is Brazil. I can never pronounce this. I'm not even trying to say Aquarela do Brazil. I can never say it. I'm sorry. I'll just call it Brazil. I think this is the most creative short of the piece. I think the entire opening with the song, with the watercolor splashes, reeds turn into flamingos, bananas turn into toucans, a Venus flytrap swallowing a bee somehow turns into Donald Duck. At least I think that's what happened. I may have inadvertently been on something when I saw that, but nevertheless, I think it really plays with the creativity of its premise and gives Donald a great character to work off from.
I like the way they really introduced Carnival, talking about, you know, the dancing. I mean, really, the only thing that was missing, I honestly believe in the whole thing, was a little bit of Toons Spanish style paprika. But other than that, I mean, you really got everything that you needed, and then the use of the colors really it pops off screen and then it ends. Like I was getting into it, and then boom.
We're gonna get back to that because you just highlighted my one big issue with the film.
Yeah, well, an inclusion or a conclusion rather to TJ's point. I think what he's trying to say is if it had some tuned spicy paprika, it'd be spicy, bitch. But unfortunately, it doesn't quite get to that point. I'm with TJ. I found it underwhelming, and frankly, I'll be honest. I felt like a lot of those animation things that you mentioned, as entertaining and production solid as they may have been, it seemed like something. I was at the Enterprise. By way of Nino Brown, and I was getting beamed up by Scotty in New Jack City. I was on some stuff. Just saying.
Oh, this is sedate compared to what's in Three Caballeros, but it is the one short that is the most comparable to that film. Where this one ends, where it really feels like it's cut off just as it's ramping up. It just keeps building and building, and it just stops. And Three Caballeros, this would have been the introduction to everything that's about to go down. I do disagree. I think that I love the creative use of the paintbrush. I love when they start singing the song and they're walking down the steps or drawing the steps as they go down, where the swirling mosaic sidewalks that were shown in the live action, you see them dancing on that. This is the one short where I think that it marries almost perfectly the travelogue aspect with the hilarity that ensues.
For me, there was no leading up to it. You know, the whole thing with an ending is like, I know it's coming. We've talked about other films. Obviously, everything is Marvel now. So when you're watching a Marvel movie, you know that an ending is coming. This one just kind of just was like, in your face. And I didn't know, and I was upset because I wasn't ready for it. I did like that they didn't go stereotypical with the animals, because when I saw the bananas turn into the toucans, the first thing that came to mind were the crows from Dumbo. And I was like, but they didn't do it. They didn't do it. Shouts out to the crew for that.
Yeah, it would have been kind of odd if they started jive talking with Spanish accents. I mean,
Oh my God.
I'm telling you, bro. Look, let's not pretend like somebody didn't come out with some Cholo vibe whenever they were joking about it, right?
What? Now that you've seen the film, do you think that as disparate as all the segments are, and the highs and the lows that they could represent, do you think that as a whole, and especially considering the film's purpose within the Good Neighbor Policy, that it A, succeeded, and B, if this product is still considered required viewing? So,
hearing all the propaganda side of it, the Nazi didn't make it into Latin America, so I'm going to say that it was because of this film that the Nazis didn't get into Latin America. So thank you, Walt Disney, for that. Now, is it required? I think that it is one of the greatest Schoolhouse Rock episodes ever. But I can't call it required. I love the way that they told me so much, because like I say, I was informed. Like, I was informed more watching this on real world stuff than I am on some of the fake stuff. Like, and there's a lot of fake stuff in film that we need to learn. This is real world stuff. I just can't say that you are less of a movie buff if you never saw this movie, because again, I felt like I was the greatest movie buff in the world, and I didn't know that it existed. And now that I know, I'm glad that I know, because knowing is half the battle. But nah, I'm cool.
If one wants to consider themselves knowledgeable in the history of certain things and details of this country surrounding World War II in that time, awareness of Walt flippin' Disney as a propaganda machine is a very interesting concept. However, I would argue that this film is not the best example to do that with, okay? If you find yourself in a place where Donald Duck is experiencing a nightmare and he's actually throwing the Sea Kyle salute, that is a much better example of Walt Disney producing propaganda, and there's no hands around it. That's a thing that happened, and my mind was blown when you showed me that, Demos. And frankly, I don't want to know what lewd and lascivious means by which you acquired this movie to show to me. But that all being said, is it required viewing? No. But it is a good piece of history. And frankly, to both your points, it's the earliest form of edutainment, and there are some certain things that are successful about it.
I agree. The short that Kyle was referring to was Der Führer's Face. This is probably one of the greatest examples of American propaganda ever put to film. As far as Saludos Amigos, I think the question that I pose myself is it a good thing that the film leaves you wanting more? Especially in the last half of the film. And what we're talking about, last half of the film, it's a 42 freaking minute long movie. Can you even, I barely consider it a film. There are MacGyver episodes that are longer than this, where he spends time in Latin America fighting dictators. It also has good music. That theme song is incomparable, but it does succeed in what it was trying to do. And like I said before, it's a fantastic time capsule, what it is. So in the end, if you're a fan of film history or are interested in seeing war propaganda from the time, or you're a fan of Donald Duck, gauchos, you might get a kick out of this film. I wouldn't exactly call it a required viewing unless you're in it to watch all the Disney canon. If you want to watch all the animated films and say you've watched the 60 films in that series, go for it. Otherwise, it's above average, but nothing particularly special as a film in itself. So what did you guys think of Saludos Amigos? Have you heard of Saludos Amigos? Are you a fan of its more popular sequel or companion film, The Three Caballeros? Let us know in the comments below. I'm looking forward. I know that Kyle is excited beyond belief.
Hey, listen, maybe I'll stay awake through it this time.
How could you fall asleep during The Three Caballeros? It's one of the more bombastic, loud, zany, insane Disney films ever.
And yet, I could never complete it as a kid because I would fall asleep.
Oh, so you didn't get to the crazy parts of that film.
Crazy, but
listen, man.
Yeah,
Not that I'm condoning, not that I'm even saying that you should do such a thing.
Hashtag troubadour pipes. Gotcha.
Hashtag troubadour pipes. However, if people say that Fantasia is weird, people say that Alice in Wonderland is weird, and these are the types of films that you should partake when under certain influences. I tell you right now, Three Caballeros. That's where it's at. Those last 20 minutes, just the last 20 minutes alone in that film are freaking insane, and I can't wait to talk about it. Anyway.
For a good time, check out Three Caballeros, Disney's answer to Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. Moving on.
Wear a sombrero, sit back, and enjoy the duck. TJ, thanks as always for joining us. Where can we find you?
Grab your Twitter, click on that search bar, and type in Tokeo J. That's TOKEOJ. Same thing on Snapchat.
Kyle, as always, for partaking this and subjecting yourself to the amigos.
No, the amigos are fine. It's the caballeros that I have trouble with. But of course, I'm Kyle Nash, a student of the game. As my friend Tokeo Jamison said, if you want us to be with you, go ahead and hit it up on Stitcher. Holla at your boy. And that'll be a great time for dinner time. But of course, you can check me out as well on sportsmediapass.com, a product of Blue HQ Media, where you can check out my sports musings. Of course, I write for the Dolphins Wire of USA Today as well, covering the Miami Dolphins. And of course, you can find me on Twitter at the SOTG. Find me on Instagram as the same at the SOTG. Find me on Facebook as the student of the game.
And of course, you can find me at hilaritybydefault.com. Fun stuff every week. On Facebook and Instagram, Hilarity by Default. On Twitter, at Default Hilarity. And make sure to check us out here every day, where life is hilarious by default.
Hasta la vista. Adios, amigos.